everyone. I hope you are enjoying this wonderful day today. It is gorgeous outside. It's a picture perfect morning. It's a thank you to all of you for being here. This is a important conversation to me, especially so much what's going on right now. Still, even though we don't hear things happening in the news, but unfortunately there are incidents of anti-Semitism still brewing all around the world. So just to do a quick recap, if you're joining us for the first time today, this is part 4 of a conversation on anti-Semitism and where it comes from, its challenges, trying to understand it. And we spoke last week about the theory that Jews are hated simply because they're different. And they're often perceived as being outsiders. And we disproved that by the fact that anti-Semitism did not diminish when Jews attempted to assimilate, meaning no matter what we did, whether we were outsiders or insiders, there was always some reason for people to find hatred and anti-Semitism. History has shown us that whenever there was a widespread assimilation of Jews into their host country, it didn't take too long for some type of anti-Semitic persecution that followed right after. Now, the most common explanation that you could ask any professor about where anti-Semitism comes from, they'll tell you it's simply racism. This is a big word that everyone's using today, that anti-Semitism is a form of racism. Now, the evidence is that the Nazis were racists who actively spoke about the inferiority of the non-Aryan races. So you had, the Holocaust, as it came to an end, concluded because of the hatred that they had for the Jews as one of the non-Aryan races. Now, this explanation is very weak for many reasons. Now, even if the theory of racism were to be true, racism is only found in the modern period, meaning before the modern period and previous centuries of anti-Semitism, Jews were only hated because of their religion. And even if they converted, they were accepted into the majority culture, whether it was, pagan, Christian, or Muslim. All you had to do was convert, and boom, the anti-Semitism disappeared. Now, this explanation of a racial theory is only given by those who focus very, very narrowly on the Holocaust. They forget about the centuries, the hundreds of years of anti-Semitism that came before. Now, as horrible as the Holocaust was, we can't forget the rest of Jewish history. The Holocaust is a small part of our history, right? There was ferocious amounts of slaughter of Jews during the Crusades, the pogroms of the Khmelnytsky massacres, which were all motivated by religious hatred and not racism. So I don't see racism as a factor in today's anti-Zionism. Anti-Semitism needs a very, very deep explanation, and I'm going to try to do that with you today. So the overriding problem is that racial theory for anti-Semitism is self-contradictory. Jews are not a race. End of conversation. Thank you so much for coming today. I'll see you next week for part 5. Okay, so they're not a race. Anyone can become a Jew. And members of every race, creed, color in the world have done so at some point or another. There are Black Jews, there are Ethiopian Jews, Hispanic Jews, Chinese Jews, Russian Jews, and they're from all over the world. There are Jews. So there is no distinguishing racial physical feature that is common only to Jews. Even the idea of a Jewish nose is a myth. Okay, anti-Semites don't hate Jews who have distinctly Jewish physical features. They hate all Jews. They don't care what they look like. They don't care if they're having peyot, no peyot, kippah, no kippah. You're Jewish, they hate you. They hate Eastern European Jews. They hate Israeli Jews. They hate Russian Jews. They hate Yemenite Jews. They hate blonde Jews. They hate blue-eyed Dutch Jews. They hate dark-skinned Mediterranean Jews. Any Jew will do. Anti-Semitism cannot be explained because racism, it just doesn't work. We're not a race. Jews are a nation, not a race. Now, if you look more carefully at the Nazis, you see that anti-Semitism was far more central to their worldview than racism. Hitler said in Mein Kampf, right? He was the first anti-Semite and not a racist. He made it very clear. He made that distinction. I'm not a racist. I'm an anti-Semite. Okay, he was very clear about it. The Nazis, this is a quote. He says, were indeed racists when they claimed the inferiority of the non-Aryan race, but they did not, for example, racially denigrate Japanese or Arabs, both Nazi allies. Like they have no problem like teaming up with the Japs, the Japanese, or Arabs. They definitely worked in tandem with the Nazis, even though they themselves were not Aryan. Hitler himself was said that in scientific sense, there is no such thing as race. He didn't believe in race. He wasn't a racist. He was a very cold-blooded anti-Semite. Now, the thing that I think that grabbed Hitler's attention in the last moments of his life were Jews. And on April 29th, 1945, Adolf Hitler addressed the world under this, hold on a second. He addressed the world under this ridiculous observance of the laws of race, that he was going to be remove any opposition to the universal blah, 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 blah. Jews were the universal poisoner of all society. International Jewry was evil, and therefore he was doing the world a favor by getting rid of them. So he focused all of his resources at the end of the world. He stopped the war because he thought it was more important to murder and kill Jews than winning World War II, which is kind of scary. Like, this is how mad this person was. If you actually study the Nazi view of the Jews, it doesn't match our normal view of racism. Their claim was not that Jews were inferior of intelligence, that they had lacking of abilities, right? Like, it's not like what Southerner racists said about the blacks. Their focus was specifically on the idea that Jews represented. What Jews represented is what they hated. Okay? Hitler said, it's true. We are barbarians. And we free humanity from the shackles of the soul, from the degrading suffering caused by the false vision called conscience and morality. The Jews have inflicted two wounds on mankind: circumcision on its body and consciousness on its soul. So these are Jewish inventions. They believed in a form of, barbarism. The war for the world dominion will be fought entirely between us, the Germans, and the Jews. All else is a facade and illusion. This is very, very clear. No one talks about this. This is ultimately what anti-Semitism is about. Jews are hated because of Judaism, our ideas. Okay, this is part of it. You have Pope Benedict the 16th. This was his address in Auschwitz, May 28, 2006. Okay, I'm reading this. He says, deep down, those vicious criminals, by wiping out this people, wanted to kill the God who called Abraham, who spoke on Sinai, and laid down principles to serve as a guide for mankind. Principles that are eternally valid. If this people, by its very existence, was a witness to the God who spoke to humanity and took us to himself, then that God finally had to die, and power had to belong only to man, to those men who thought that by force they had made themselves masters of the world. By destroying Israel, they ultimately wanted to tear up the taproot of Christian faith and replace it with a faith of their own invention, faith in the rule of man, the rule of the powerful. Okay, that is the Pope Benedict's address in 2006. The Nazi goal was simply to replace God's rule over the world with the rule of man. And the way you get rid of God is by getting rid of the Jews, because Jewish people, my friends, your ancestors, our ancestors, witnessed this relationship between the Almighty and mankind. Now, whatever this is, it's not the standard of racism. Racism didn't produce anti-Semitism, Nazi anti-Semitism. The Nazis were anti-Semites first. Racism was secondary, if they believed in it at all. Now, what racism did for the Nazis was to broaden their anti-Semitic targets and say all Jews, even those who abandoned Judaism, are equally the bearers of the ideas that the Nazis wanted to eliminate. in a vision that is very oddly parallels the Torah's view. Hitler's racism allowed him to say that however much Jews flee from their Judaism, the Jew remains the carrier, the bearer of a different kind of vision. Doesn't matter how religious or irreligious you are. Because you're a Jew, there's something inherent about your soul. Okay? So in Mein Kampf, this is on page 312 if you ever want to read Mein Kampf and you want to find this. He says in his new language, the Jew will express the old ideas. His inner nature has not changed. The Jew can speak 1,000 languages and nevertheless remain a Jew. His traits of character have remained the same. It is always the same Jew, right? This is not a racial issue. Racism may have been just a concept Hitler used to explain the special edition of anti-Semitism that all Jews bear an inescapable, dangerous nature, but racism was not the source of his hatred. So if you can attribute anti-Semitism to what we spoke about the last few weeks, the economics and power, you can't explain it as Jews being perceived as the chosen people any more than others consider themselves as the chosen. The scapegoat theory we spoke about the outsider theory, we spoke about racial theory. Then what can explain this ridiculous phenomenon of this kind of hatred? Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to review again. Okay, anti-Semitism is commonly explained as coming from racism. Okay, we reject that idea. The Holocaust came as a result of Nazis' hatred for Jews, one of the non-Aryan race. This was not an issue of of racism, but rather anti-Semitism. Racism is not the root of anti-Semitism. Okay, since racism is relatively recent and anti-Semitism has been around for thousands of years, I'm going to reject the idea of the racial theory. Now, we have a bigger issue that Jews can't be defined as a race, since Jews throughout the world have many different physical characteristics. Color, black, white, it doesn't really matter. Anti-Semitism was way more central to Hitler's worldview than racism. The Nazis' hatred for Jews did not match the normal view of racism. Their focus was on the ideas that Jews represented, not on the race or the people. So what we're basically saying is that the racial theory for anti-Semitism is a weak argument. Okay. Does money and economics factor, does that explain anti-Semitism? No, it doesn't, because when we were poor, when we were rich, it doesn't work. Does anti-Semitism come from Jews being labeled the chosen people? No, because there's lots of other people. Again, how valid are all the other explanations? The scapegoat theory doesn't work. None of these theories work. Where does this irrational hatred come from? Okay, so what I want to do is like this. I'm going to cut today's class a little shorter because next week is going to be a little longer, and it's a bigger theme. And next week, what I want to do is I want to show you. Forget about the psychological, historical explanations for anti-Semitism. I'm going to show you next week, God willing, the Torah's perspective on the root cause of anti-Semitism. Meaning, this is something that the Torah itself predicted a long, long time ago. Where does this hatred come from? It comes from something completely different. I'm going to argue that Nazis were right on some level, that it's not about racism, it was about our ideas. The key to understanding this, just to kind of like lead you to where we're going to go, God willing, next week, is this idea of Har Sinai. The word Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, the word Sinai comes from the word sin'ah, hatred. And on some level, the day that we became the people of the book, the day that we accepted the Torah itself, the day that we came along and tried to teach the world these ideas and beliefs, that is the day that we started to be hated amongst the people of the planet. And I'll explain why. I'll show you the source and so on and so forth. It's fascinating. But don't allow anyone to tell you that anti-Semitism is about racism. It's not. Anti-Semitism, is the oldest hatred on planet Earth. It is irrational. It makes no sense. There's no way to understand it. I'm going to argue next week that its real root cause is spiritual. And God willing, we'll walk through those ideas together. Does anyone have any questions, any comments, anything they want me to explain right now on things that we discussed up until now? Next week will be the last episode dealing with anti-Semitism. Then we're going to switch. But if you have any questions up until now, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I look forward to continuing the conversation next Wednesday. All right, everybody, sending you all lots of love. Have a Shavua Tov, a Shabbat Shalom Mevarach, a meaningful fast on Sunday. Looking forward to seeing you in person, God willing, soon. Have a great day, everybody.